Hey guys, how's it going? So, the new developer notes are out for the buff patch. We already knew that Hua Young was getting nerfed, but they didn't add in any extra nerfs, but they added in a bunch of buffs. And you know what? I'd say this is a pretty good list. I think some of these characters really badly need buffs. I wasn't really one of the people that thought Remnant Violet needed it. I've been using him a decent amount. I've seen him a lot. I thought he was fine. I thought top model Luluca needed one. Fire Captain Flan. She's like almost a character that you can really utilize, but I think she definitely needed something overall, I feel. Mildred is odd. I don't think anybody would have said that he needs a buff. Like literally anybody? Like who asked? I don't know what's up with that one. Zahawk, I think that's a pretty cool one. I don't think he needs too much, but a buff would be kind of cool. Luluca definitely needs one. Bad Cat Armin is terrible and badly needs one. As for Jenna, there I am. I'm getting a buff. She's a 3-star, so who cares unless they're making a special change real soon, right? Then Aurastron really needs a change, and Chatty is an odd choice because I feel like it's kind of a decent artifact, but anyways, I was like, that's kind of cool. So what's really cool is 3 ML5s are getting changes. I think that's pretty awesome. ML5s are chase units, and a lot of people get excited about that, right? But let's just dive into it. So, first of all, Remnant Violet. So the main thing is now his S3... Oh wait, excuse me, now his S1 has the soul burn to get an extra turn. His old soul burn was terrible, so this is a nice change. I don't know how often you'll be able to use it in a normal match, but if you don't have too many souls needed for your team, this is actually really helpful. And they also really made it a huge improvement to his S2. Makes it so if you get 5 stacks when you attack, so if you're at 4 stacks and you actually use your S1, then you'll use your S3 after using the bar. Before you actually had to get attacked, so people could kind of play around it and manage it easier. So this is actually makes him way easier to use, right? You actually get to control this a little bit more. You can force it to be used at the right moment. That can be really nice. They also made it so his S3 cooldown is -1 turn, and he gets attack buff for 3 turns. So basically, they gave him some pretty nice changes. It's mostly like quality of life overall, but makes it so he's better in an extended fight, makes it so that he actually gets to force his S3 often. That's really useful, makes it so his soul burn isn't completely worthless. I think if they were gonna buff Violet, this is how they do it, is they make his soul burn a little better, way better actually, and they add something nice like this where he gets to use his S3 when he stacks the bar fully just from an S1. And, you know, make it so he gets to use his S3 a little bit more. I think his changes are good. I think Remnant Violet was already pretty solid. I think these make him way better. I think he's going to be seen a little bit more. I think a lot of people who thought he was bad might try him out a little bit more because they're like, hey, let's try out the buffs, and then realize, oh, he works great into a lot of common characters. He works well into Apocalypse Ravi, Alencia, Belian, those kinds of characters, you know. Anyone who isn't able to just really counter him like Archdemon and Solitaria and stuff and does like many small hits or unreliable is pretty weak against him. You know, Apocalypse Ravi can't afford to just S3 him constantly, right? If she misses, she loses way too much. And same with Rimuru, for instance, right? Now, if he gets hit, he's still going to die, so he's the same old Violet. But I think this helps his usability a little bit and makes him a little more consistent, which is really nice. Top model Luluca. My favorite character in the game, so I was real excited to see that she's getting a buff, right? They made it so her S2 gives 5% more combat readiness, so it's 20%. And they made it so her S3 now gives attack buff to the rest of the team. That's pretty big overall, right? It makes her way more supporty for the team. And now she has a critical hit chance imprint of up to 16.8%, which is actually huge. Black Hand of the Goddess was used on her a lot because people just couldn't really hit the amount of crit chance they needed. This eases that requirement a lot. Fast characters, it's hard to get crit chance on them too. So this is pretty big for her. I think that this is a nice change. I think it makes it so you can use her in more aggro teams or cleave teams. She can be the attack buffer, which is great, and she's a big damage dealer. We'll also see her pushing. She's basically like a closer Charles that uses a non-attack skill to push rather than doing an AoE and hitting the opponent's team. So she works very similarly to that, I think. I think she might seem some use. I think now, finally, she's not just a worse Milim, which I think is a great change. I think she can be kind of helpful to the team. She does a good amount of damage. She's a good nuke, but usually she's not able to just like one-shot a big tank, right? But if she's going second after another target and she's also pushing up the team and giving attack buff, I think she gives enough support ability that her damage can be, it doesn't have to take something out in one hit, but she's really supporting the team with that damage and then getting them to take their turns and finish them off. So I'm going to be trying this out 100%. I'm going to try and put some really good gear on her. Might try and make her insanely fast, like 290 or something like that, or maybe I'll make her a little slower with really high damage on pen set. We'll see. Pirate Captain Flan. I think the changes they made to her were pretty smart. So her S1 now has a 75% chance of stealing a buff. I think that's really useful. If they have immunity, you get to steal the immunity and then plant a bomb on them if you have Summertime Asteria's artifact. They also made it so she has 50% effectiveness, makes it way easier to build her. You don't really have to stack nearly as much as before. I mean, that's a huge amount of stats if you think about it. And also, she now can't crit, which is actually good because the bomb artifact doesn't work if you crit. So this helps her a lot, right? And now after she uses S1, she uses Hunt, which pushes the team up. So now I guess if you get a dual attack or anything like that, she's also going to activate it rather than just you only having to use S1 on your turn, I guess. So that's pretty useful. Her S3 now gives attack buff for 3 turns. Just increases her damage overall in a longer fight and decreases their combat readiness by an extra 5%. Really small change. The main thing is the effectiveness and not being able to crit and the chance to steal a buff. I think that makes her a little more useful. I'm not sure if we're going to start seeing her all the time, but she's a character where if your opponent doesn't really have much cleanse, I think she can really take over a game. I think if your opponent has something like DN, but maybe doesn't have another good cleanser or immunity holder, she might actually work really well. We'll have to see, but she is able to just stun units like DN over and over with her S1 bomb, so that's actually pretty good. I think that this is a pretty good change, and I'm glad they didn't go overboard and make it so she just like strips all buffs and then just like ruins the game and is like super overpowered, right? Vildred. This is like, okay, nobody asked for this buff really, and also what is this buff? Increased damage dealt on his S1, S2, S3. Okay, cool. I guess he's a little bit better in cleave. That's the only place he's used is the speed imprint, and I don't know, I feel like most of the time he just kills everything anyways, so okay, I guess that's cool. It helps a little bit with trying to AoE a team down. Okay, Zahawk. This change is big. This is actually really, really big. So, it may seem like it's not that big of a deal. Dispels 2 debuffs from an ally and the caster, doesn't give the barrier anymore, and now increases the combat readiness of an ally by 15% up to 20% when you max this out, and grants an extra turn to the caster. So, what's really big about that is he has an exclusive equipment where when he uses his S2, he gives attack buff to himself and an ally. Zahawk has really incredible base stats, really great speed and damage, and he only requires 50% crit chance on his abilities because he just automatically gets an extra 50% whenever he uses S1 or S3. So this means you can build him really fast and then attack buff himself and an ally and immediately go into S3 on him, and he hits like a truck. And then he gets the invulnerability, so he gets another turn possibly later if they don't like strip it off of him. And an ally is also getting this attack buff and the push. So this gives him a crazy amount of utility, kind of like top model Luluca in some ways. And he's going to hit like a truck as well, and that ally gets the buff. It makes it so you can bring a team in where you don't have an attack buff, and him being able to give it to himself and an ally just kind of completely clears that. As a DPS unit, being able to also give attack buff to an ally, I think is a pretty huge deal. And since you can build him so fast, so easily, like easily more than 260 speed if you really want to, makes it so he can go after like some sort of opener and work really well. I think this is a pretty damn strong buff. I think we might be seeing more of him for sure. He could be really frustrating to fight against possibly. I think he definitely has a place in the game right now with this change. He's also currently on banner. I think if you're a new player, you're not going to get a whole lot out of him, but if you're kind of later on in the game, you might consider pulling him. Be careful though, because I think we might get the Reincarnated as a Slime collab possibly soon, but can't confirm that for sure. Luluca. This change kind of sucks. Her S3 now goes from 85% to 100%. Well, she's better in PvE, I guess, but not really anything special. Bit of a disappointment. I feel like they should make her S2 like a passive or give her an extra turn or something like that, and she could actually be kind of cool and maybe used in more places. Okay, this one's pretty crazy. Bad Cat Armin. So this character is terrible, right? Unbelievably bad. They made changes for exactly what she needed. So now her S1 has a 45% chance to provoke. That's exactly what they needed. They removed the injury. It was kind of a random S1. It didn't really make much sense. And the provoke directly works with her S2. So now they made it a 50% chance that when she's attacked, she gives crit damage buff to the ally that's in the front of your team, and also causes them to counterattack. So every single time she's hit, there's a 50% chance that your front ally counterattacks for you, right? But if they're inflicted with provoke or redirected provoke, it doubles. So if you S1 and you provoke, like, let's say 2 units in their team, if they hit you, you just countered twice, like, automatically. Like, they're just wailing on Bad Cat Armin, which isn't doing anything. Your front unit, which could be somebody like, I don't know, Spectre Tenebria, is just slaughtering their team. That seems really strong. Not to mention, they also made it so her S3 provokes. So she actually has a reliable provoker in her S3, and then constant provokes throughout the match. And she gives herself a defense buff. So I kind of think what you would do on her is you would just build her really tanky with, like, maybe, I don't know, 130 effectiveness, 150 effectiveness, something like that. And then maybe like 230 speed, like try to make her kind of fast. And you basically just try and spam S1, and you use something like Haughty Fiend's artifact, the trophy, which causes a chance to stun every time you use a basic attack, because your basic attack's an AoE. So you're just constantly provoking or stunning their team over and over and over, and it would make it so that your opponent's just kind of getting debuffed constantly. It's kind of like how Senya's become such a powerful pick, and if you don't have cleanse, you get into this endless loop of just getting provoked over and over. She can kind of constantly do that. I think this might be really strong, actually. I see there being a lot of potential with this character. Oh, also, her Soul Burn provokes her 2 turns. That can be pretty cool against somebody like ML Koeric. They reduced her damage, but that doesn't really matter. You're kind of just going to build her a tank now. I think she has a lot of possibilities. I think she works with a ton of characters. Like, imagine using her with characters like Archdemon Mercedes, constantly counterattacking every time they hit Bad Cat, or even Senya or Spectre Tenebria, a Lion. Like, there's so many options, I think, and I think it can just completely take over a match. I think your opponent has to have cleanses, but not just cleanses. Like, even if you're against Destina, she only gets her big S3 cleanse once, and then she has to use her S2 every other turn. But what if you're just constantly provoking 1 to 2 units on their team? She can't put immunity on the team, right? So that means immunity users are the main enemy for Bad Cat Armin. I think it could be really strong. I think in slow matches, it definitely could do a lot. And in fast matches, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if you really could use her in anti-aggro or anti-cleave or something like that, but we'll have to see. I think it actually has a lot of potential, though. Jenna, wow, look who it is. So you know what's actually funny is they actually gave her some decent skills. She probably has one of the worst skill sets in the entire game right now. It's like unbelievably bad. But they made it so, you know, she's a book holder because she's a mage, and you could soul burn her S2, which decreases their buff durations and gives your team immunity. And then you get an extra turn, and then you would decrease their team's defense and push their team back 20%. For a 3-star, I mean, kind of cool. It's like baby Ran, basically. It's like a kind of crummy Ran. If she gets especially changed, I guess she could be really good, but do we really need another Ran? Hopefully not. Aurastron. So they made it so if you attack with a single attack, you now have an up to 70%, which honestly isn't amazing. You have to max this artifact, it's 5-star, to inflict a random debuff on the target for 2 turns. Decrease attack, defense, speed, or unhealable. I don't really think this matters at all. I don't think anyone's using this, but like ML Rin, possibly. It was a pretty terrible artifact before. I feel like it's still kind of crummy. There's not really anybody that actually utilizes this. The fact that it has to be a single attack also kind of hurts. So I don't really think this has much use. It's probably safe to powder it overall. Probably. But yeah, a bit of a disappointment. Now, this one is kind of cool though. Chatty. So at the beginning of battle, you start with a barrier for 2 turns. And then after you get attacked, if you go to half health, you get a barrier, and they increase the strength of the barrier. Currently, the barrier is somewhere like 120% of your attack, I think. So if they're increasing the barrier, that's huge, right? Like, a character like ML Vivian can easily get maybe around 5,000 barrier or something from Chatty, and they're increasing the size of it. So she can start the match with this ridiculously huge shield on her for survivability if you have like a lifesteal ML Vivian. I think it could be really cool. I think it actually has a lot of potential on a character like that, and maybe future characters as well. So I like that they're introducing a new mage artifact that's not book, that actually could be pretty solid on some characters right now or in the future. I think this is a good change. And that's the end of the balance patch here. So I'm obviously a little bit biased because I like a lot of these characters, but I think this is kind of an exciting balance patch overall because 3 ML5s are getting buffs, right? And I think a lot of these buffs are actually meaningful. They're not just throwaway junk buffs, a lot of them, which I think is really cool. I think Smallgate did a good job not making some of them too out of control. Like Remnant Violet, they didn't just go crazy and bank it so like, oh, he gets extra dodge chance, or like, oh, the buff can't be stripped on his S2 and all that stuff. They didn't go out of control, right? Same with top model Luluca. It feels like they kind of toned it down rather than trying to make it so she just like kills everything in one hit or does way too much. Empire Captain Flan, they made it so she doesn't just like strip all buffs and kill everybody. I think they did a good job with those. I think we're going to see more Remnant Violet. I already see a good amount of him. I think he's pretty decent. Top model Luluca, I'm going to be trying out her a lot in aggro and stuff, and cleave as well. Pirate Captain Flan, I think she's going to work pretty well in standard and maybe some aggro as well. I think she could be actually pretty cool. Villager's going to be the same. Zahawk, I think we might see him a lot in aggro or cleave. I think his damage can be pretty insane. His S3 damage hits hard, but what's also crazy is if you soul burn his S1 and somebody has a buff, they basically just explode instantly. It's a crazy amount of damage. I think Zahawk might see a lot more use possibly. We'll have to see for sure, but I think that he has enough utility and damage with such amazing base stats, and he's so easy to build with needing less crit chance, that he might be a pretty popular character for aggro. We'll have to see. Luluca's the same. Bad Cat Armin, I think she has a lot of potential. I'm pretty excited about this one. She's such a terrible unit, so it's exciting to actually see her possibly in the limelight. I guess we'll have to see exactly how it pans out. I'm going to be trying her out a bunch, but I think they actually made a good change to this 4-star Moonlight. I hope she's not too annoying, though. I guess we'll have to see. This change doesn't really matter, but whatever. Aurastron, well, I think this artifact is kind of whatever still. Kind of a shame. I wish they made it a little bit better. And Chatty seems to have a lot of potential. If you started playing a long time ago, you already have Chatty, and you could get another one from the side story that you can like buy for a little ticket or Skystones or whatever. So you could get 2, but I don't know if we'll ever really need 2 in the future, but who knows. All in all, I'm excited about these buffs and the Hua Young nerf to go along with them. I know a lot of people want characters like Apocalypse Ravi nerfed. I totally understand. But hey, a character like Zahawk completely destroys Apocalypse Ravi, huh? That's not too bad, I guess. And Remnant Violet's pretty decent against Apocalypse Ravi, too. Fire Captain Flan might be okay. I'm not really sure, but hey, a couple more options maybe for you out there. Anyways, I want to thank you a bunch for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like it or subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you guys next time.